morning, everyone. Welcome to the first edition of Let's Talk ICT with Business Remark, where we'll be bringing you exciting news, updates, and happenings about the Nigerian information communication technology sector. I am BUKOLA OLANREWAJU, the managing editor of Business Remark, an online platform where we discuss business and ICT, and also the convener of Telecom Sector Sustainability Forum. We'll be having a chat with Engineer Ikechukwu Nnamani, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Medallion Data Centres, and he also doubled as the President, Association of Telecommunication Companies of Nigeria. Kindly subscribe to our YouTube channel for more information on exciting news and updates in ICT. Thank you. Please subscribe.
Okay, I'm Engineer Ikechukwu Nnamani, CEO, MD, Medallion Data Centres. We've been operating data center business in Nigeria for over 16 years. And I believe, in fact, earlier this year, I think we got the Pioneer Data Center Award in one of the telecom conferences, our award ceremony, because people appreciate that we were really one of the first, if not the first, that understood the concept of carrier-neutral data centers, why it's important. And we've spent a lot of time building that ecosystem before a lot of people now saw it, appreciate it, and I'm always happy when I see people coming into the space because it means the foundation we laid, people are appreciating that it's a needed sector that they also need to participate in. And our goal is to just keep doing what we are doing. As I said in the past, we are doing a lot to grow the business and grow the sector for the good of all people in Nigeria.
So, with the evolution of 5G technology, the fifth generation technology, what role can you say the data center will play with this evolvement?
Data centers are very critical for 5G, purely based on how 5G works. 5G is a low latency service. What it means is that the distance between the end user and where the infrastructure is located should not be far. If it's far, then it's not going to be efficient. Because of that, you now understand that the services, most of the services that are supposed to be run on the 5G network, it cannot be done from outside the country. It's not one of that stuff where a server is located in the UK and then you are accessing the service here, right? It's not going to be that efficient. And that requires localization of content, localization of infrastructure that will enable 5G. So that clearly tells you that you need to have localized data centers where these servers and solutions and applications will be located closer to the end user. Now, you have, remember, data centers are in phases, right? So you have the regional data centers, the hyperscale ones, and then you have the edge data centers, okay, which ultimately still needs to be spread across the country. Okay. So the country needs these three types of data centers, okay, hyperscale, regional, and then the edge data centers, for the full benefit of 5G to be realized. So
looking at the type of data center you just spoke about, what category does Medallion fall into?
Medallion is both, well, currently, we would say we are operating the regional data centers. Okay. We are about to build some new hyperscale. Currently in Nigeria, there's no single hyperscale data center in Nigeria. Okay. We will most likely, depending on what others are doing, be one of the first to roll out a hyperscale data center. In fact, in Africa, it's only in South Africa that you've got hyperscale data centers operated mainly by Terraco, who fortunately now is a member of the Digital Realty Group, just like Medallion. So a lot of that expertise, we're going to bring it into our operations, learning from what they've done over there in South Africa on the hyperscale level. But yeah, we currently have several projects ongoing to be able to implement hyperscale data centers, as well as strengthen our current data centers. Okay. As you know very well, we are the #1 peering point in the sub-region. No other data center has the level of connectivity that exist in the Medallion Data Centres today, including how we are able to enable internet exchange of Nigeria operate very efficiently and the rest of it. So the goal for us is to scale this up to a very, very high level.
Okay, speaking of bringing expertise in, the recent report says Data and Medallion Data Center was recently acquisition by Digital Realty. So now this acquisition how is it going to impact the Nigerian digital ecosystem?
In a number of ways. When we decided to carry on expansion, we had the option to just raise funds. We had several funding options available to us as Medallion, but we realized that the state of play had gone beyond just money. You need expertise in the field. And Digital Realty, in terms of scope of data center operations, is the biggest in the whole world. They are the #1 data center in the whole world in terms of spread and capacity, right? So for us, going to partner and split our old Medallion business into the voice interconnect, which is now operated as Tele-Africa, and then the data center service, which is what was acquired by Digital Realty Pemboni Engr JV. Doing that for us was not just about money. It was about the marketplace that currently exists within the group. It's about the technical expertise that currently exists within the group. And this is something you may not find in several other emerging and even existing data centers. That level of expertise and scope, the technology transfer that the country benefits from, you can't get it elsewhere. So that's one of the major advantage in terms of training of the workforce, technology transfer, and best practices, industry best practices. But beyond that, also money. The data center at the level we are playing is a long-term play. It involves a lot of money. Since October, when we closed this transaction, we've invested over $100 million of equity, not debt, equity. This is foreign direct investment into Nigeria. Again, people don't know this because we are not one of those that make noise, as we always say, but the reality is, and I would even call the investment we've done so far as, call it a down payment, because over the next year or so, we'll be tripling, if not quadrupling that amount, when we start actual infrastructure implementation. So there is foreign direct investment, not just expertise that comes with that partnership.
Okay, you talk about funding. Now, speaking of funding, aside Medallion acquisition by Digital Realty, we found out that some partners, some stakeholders to main data centers operator in Nigeria that have similar thing, which I don't want to mention their names. We have like 2. So now, is it that the sector right now is not buoyant enough, or why is this happening?
It's a natural trend. It's the evolution in the ecosystem. It's the way it's done. Basically, from a stakeholder standpoint, when people go into business, they go into business for 2 reasons, most times. Number 1 is grow the business and then exit by acquisition by third parties. It's a way to do return on investment, and this is primary for infrastructure projects that is long-term, and you may not be able to generate enough revenue to be profitable to give the return on investment to your investors. If you cannot demonstrate an exit strategy for them, nobody's going to invest in you, because nobody wants to tie down their money or lose their money. So from that standpoint, in basic financial modeling, it's a business structure that people go into the business with the core focus of exiting eventually. And some funds are actually meant to exit, like venture capital funds. They have a duration under which they must exit a transaction they've done. It's by law that set up the funds, right? Then you have the second group, who are people that, depending on the nature of the business, they are convinced it's more profitable for them to hold on to it long term. So they are not planning to exit. They just run it for 10 years, 20 years, and just keep running it, right? So even in the data center space, apart from Digital Realty, I think there's probably only one other entity, which, as you said, we may not want to call their name, that is currently operating in the space, who would not be looking at coming in grow the business to exit. Okay. Some of the others ultimately will be acquired. We know that because it's the way their business is structured. Okay. So you're going to see a lot of merger and acquisition, maybe not now because everybody's at the building stage, but in the next 3 to 5 years, you start seeing much more merger and acquisition. What we see happen now is the entrance of these international players into the space. Over time, you're still going to see some development in that space, but it's a basic part of business. There's nothing wrong with that.
Okay, so speaking of localization of that data now, just talk about 5G, how the infrastructures. Okay, let me come with this, with the infrastructures. We've known that data center are the infrastructures of the infrastructures, and right now, different sectors are complaining in Nigeria currently because of the fuel scarcity, cost of operation, and everything. How is it affecting data center operation?
Directly, because data center has to be powered 24 hours. It's a 24-hour business. It's not a case of we are shutting down, we are closed. No, it's 24 hours. So if you are in a situation where power supply from the utility company is not efficient, then unfortunately you have to self-power your operations. And if you are using diesel generators, over the last 1 year, the price of diesel has, I think, probably tripled, right, over the last 1 year. So it's a direct hit. You have two options. One is wait it out, expecting that either utility power supply improves, which ultimately may be cheaper for you from an operational standpoint, or that the dynamics in terms of diesel costs and all that changes, reduces. The third option is you are forced to try to increase price, but there you run into a big bottleneck, right? Because who do you increase the price to? Everybody is complaining. So ultimately, you just have to a large extent, want to wait it out a bit and hope that the dynamics from a power supply standpoint changes, because that still remains the biggest issue. There are other ones which has to do with forests, because when you want to especially do expansion, realistically, most of the electronics that is going to be in the data center is going to be imported. Your brick and mortar, yes, you could do, but beyond that, the electronics that run the data center has to be imported, and you need forest. And if the naira keeps depreciating and the forest is not available from the central bank, you are forced to buy from the parallel market at a very high cost, right? So all these are challenges that is being faced. But as I said, anybody that is in the data center space that is not ready for the long haul and believe that over time things will change, they're not going to last. Okay. Because all our expectation is that over time, the economic status of the country will change.
Okay, speaking of forests, we noticed that this ongoing outcry by stakeholders, telecommunications and data has been known. So now what is the government doing, the minister, to alleviate this?
Well, I guess you're asking the wrong person, because you should be asking central bank that question or the minister of finance. All we know is that we are the recipient of the problem. Okay. They are the ones to solve it. But I also know enough within the status of the country that we start running into forest challenge when inflow is reduced. Oil and gas still remains the biggest part of forest inflow into the country from the government standpoint, apart from what private sector is doing. And if, as is being reported, there's a lot of oil theft, there's a lot of all kind of stuff that is making that revenue to drop, then this problem will be with us for much longer, unfortunately. But what we've done, which really goes back into the foreign direct investment, is go out there, convince people that there's potential in the country, convince people that this is a country worth investing in, and then we are bringing in forests. You understand? We are doing direct foreign investment. Our investment so far has been in USD. You understand? And I think to a large extent we are helping solve that problem. And if more companies are able to do that, then the government wouldn't necessarily have to keep depending on whatever happens from crude oil sales and all. The private sector, if well energized, but it will take a lot of convincing to tell people that Nigeria is still worth investing in, given all the stuff you see every day in the press. So, but some of us so far have been able to do that. We hope that continues, and we also hope other companies are able to do the same. Okay.
Now you talked about data hosting. Then, I want to ask this question: that how do you see, in what area is Medallion playing in this space? The localization of data centers?
By providing infrastructure that enables it. That's what we do. Data centers are the infrastructure where those servers content are hosted. We are hosting, for instance, niradi.ng domain servers. We are hosting a lot of critical infrastructure, right? And if those data centers are not there, then you can't keep it in your house, right? So that's the role we really play by building data centers, operating them efficiently. We call it the building where these contents can be located. Okay. The other part of it now is that people should create the content, and two, people should be willing to host the content in country, because that's a whole new ball game, right? Some people, for whatever reason, are still hosting their content outside, but a lot of that is changing because in the past, it used to be a case that there's no quality data centers they can use. Now that is changing. There's still a cost differential where somebody says it's probably cheaper to host outside than to host in country. Naturally, that will be there until the volume of the business grows to what it is outside. If you look at a high-SP offering domain hosting service in Nigeria, for instance, some of them, their total client base may be less than 1,000, right? And their cost profile may not be much different from what a GoDaddy that probably has 10 million customers is doing. So GoDaddy can afford to charge $10 a month, for hosting service. With 10 million, that's about $100 million they are generating a month. The Nigerian equivalent with only 1,000, even if he's charging $1,000, he's still making way less revenue than what GoDaddy is making by charging $10. And that's the reality. We have to accept that fact. There was a time we called for government to realize this, create some buffer, bridge the gap. But unfortunately, I don't think government have realized how critical this is, that there have to be an enabling environment for local hosting. There's currently a disconnect, a gap that needs to be filled, and I think government have a role to do that. Instead of just giving only fuel subsidy that is subject to debate, whether it's been transparent, whether there's fraud in it, creating some subsidy in data hosting, encouraging local data hosting companies to be able to bridge the cost so that they can actually host more people can come on board. And over time, it's not going to be forever. After some time, the usage grows significantly, that the unit price to everybody comes down. Then you've achieved something for the country.
Okay. Now on investment, how can you quantify the level of investment in data center subsector in Nigerian economy now?
I can only talk about my company. I know what we've invested, and between me and you, it's not even something we want to be specific about. But just know that we've invested a lot of money in USD over the last 1 year, and we're going to probably invest tons more in the coming year.
Okay, now between policy and regulation now, which has impacted the data center operation in Nigeria?
Probably more of policy, because the regulation is still being worked on. The data center space is still not regulated. And that's because it's seen as a REIT, right? Real estate investment transaction, right? The difference between a data center building and a hotel is just that in hotel, people come there to sleep. In data centers, servers come there to sleep, if I may be that simplistic, right? So, from that standpoint, it's still that way, but is the policy in terms of implementing the policy on local hosting. There is a policy on local hosting that is not fully implemented. Okay. There are a lot of this stuff that we think still needs to be done from a policy standpoint.
Okay, now, lastly, because of time, data centers, where do you see data center heading in the next future, and what technology will be more relevant, important next year?
Internet of Things, whether it's driven by 5G or any of the subscriber-based technologies, is not important, but Internet of Things is here to stay. That is what's going to drive the new data being generated. Machine-to-machine data generation is seen to be bigger over time to human data generation, right? So Internet of Things is what is going to drive all this, and it's here. The services are coming up every day. More companies are going into it. More companies are putting out solutions that subscribers are embracing, and that's what ultimately, and again, it goes hand in hand, because Internet of Things does not exist without data centers, right? So the more there are data centers available, the more Internet of Things services can be implemented and rolled out, and then hopefully the country will benefit from a smarter economy.
Okay. There was this report that the banking sector in Nigeria are suffering from people were actually tripping out this pattern. So is it the same thing in the data center space? And also, secondly, is the experts in Nigeria. What can you say about it?
The current phase of people leaving the country, especially the youth, is what it is, right? There is a scarcity of workforce globally. Different countries are looking for smart people. And unfortunately, truth be told, Nigeria is currently not the most convenient place to live, truth be told, right? We've got issues with insecurity. We've got issue with high inflation. All these are issues that would naturally make a young person, if given the opportunity to go use their skills in other parts of the world, to do that. And these countries are also not dumb. They know that we have a very strong and intelligent workforce, and so they are creating windows for people to come. But it's not a total loss.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is, if you check, going back to the issue of foreign exchange coming into the country, I don't have the exact statistics, but I know what the people in diaspora sent into the country is significant. And if you're not having that inflow coming back by people staying outside, working and remitting money to their family and friends here, the situation would even be worse than it is today. So it's not a total loss, as long as people that decide to ply their trade outside are mindful and conscious of the country and are ready to contribute back. And then some of it also would portray training. If you go out there, you acquire skills, and hopefully, which is why people like us are still investing in the country, we are optimistic that tomorrow will be better than today for Nigeria. We are one of those that are truly, truly optimistic that the country, better days are still ahead. You're going to see people come back with the skills they've acquired to contribute to the new emerging economy. So it's affecting everybody, but I think we are still at that phase where the number of people that are still available to work is still significant. What you're noticing is that people are leaving and they are being replaced by people looking for jobs. The only thing we encourage people is this is the time to acquire skills, because if you are not acquiring technology-based skills, then after some time you'll be sitting looking for jobs when people are looking for people with skills. So this is the best time for people to actually put themselves through relevant training.
Okay, you just spoke about it. I just wanted to talk about the skills needed for the data center. And there was this complaint about Nigerian education sector not giving out the best thing that the market is actually looking for. What will you say? Globally,
the workforce have changed.
Okay.
When people, including myself, when we look for people to hire, we are not just interested in what school did you go to. In fact, I can't recall the last time when I'm going through somebody's CV, I'm looking at what school did they go to. Is it 2-1, 2-2 first class? For me, it's currently irrelevant. Okay, it's important because you are expected through going through formal education to have the minimum education, right? But I'm more interested in, since you left school, what skills have you acquired? Okay. And it's all over the world. It's not just in Nigeria. If you go outside, you find out that people actually are more effective when they acquire this 6 months, 12 months practical training. Well, if you want to go into software development, you take time and you are trained in it, whatever. So those practical training, apart from when back in the days we had very robust polytechnics where they actually teach you practical stuff, it's not really there anymore, right? The university educational system is structured differently, right? It is more, I don't want to say theoretical, but it's more design-oriented, right, than practical handwork-oriented. We used to have back in the days technical schools that no longer exist in the country. But even that, whatever was there before has been overtaken by technology. We are now living in the digital world, digital age, where it is now soft skills that people need, not your traditional. If somebody today say, I'm training to be a mechanic, you're finding out that if you go to some of the good auto shops, they are using computers to analyze the car to find out what is the problem to fix it, not your try and error that a traditional mechanic would do back in the days, right? So things have evolved. So even for a mechanic, you suddenly find out that if that is your achieving profession, you need to upgrade to what is the new technologies being used for automotive services, right? So the key point for me is there is need for a trained workforce, but it is not your traditional 4-year, 5-year university type training. Even if you have that, you still need to acquire the relevant skills. The advantage that gives you is that you're already enlightened, right? Why it could take somebody much longer to comprehend, you that is already gone through formal education, it's faster for you to pick up and all that, but it's different. It's a different skill set that is needed. And we're encouraging people pick up some of these skill sets because that's what is practical at this time. Okay,
lastly, you were talking about interventions, government intervention for the survival and the growth of the economy, the sector actually. So what's, and like, you can just mention maybe 2 interventions that you think government can actually do again to enable a seamless and a profitable data center sector in Nigeria?
I've said the one of power. Yeah. Whatever options they have, whatever plans they have to fix the power situation, they have to do that. Sooner the better, because what we see currently is definitely not sustainable. As I said, some of us could bear the higher cost just to see how it plays out, but eventually you may be forced to either increase your price, which means that price ultimately is passed down to the subscribers or otherwise, right? So to avoid that, and if government fixes power, a lot of things get fixed. Okay. So to me, that is critical, right? We're talking about the forest situation, doing whatever it takes to stabilize that, so that if you need to bring in technology to build your data centers and all, it's easy for you. Okay. And then that will speed up the time to implement these infrastructures, right? We're talking about implementing some of the policies, like in terms of local hosting and all that, which will drive the demand. And of course, though ultimately the private sector and the citizens will lead this, governments really need to digitize the running of governance. You know, that process, they have to do more of it, right? Because that is where the usability, that is where the customer base that you need to be able to justify investment would have to come from.
Okay, thank you so much, sir, for your time.
Thank you.